Good evening, everybody. This is Glenda with Fralins and Friends Crafts Plus. Seem we're doing more plus as like in the painting and other things lately than we are in the actual crafts. Painting's a craft, isn't it? Anyway, I thought I would kind of stick with painting till I get through this thing in Exodus. Do some sketches maybe, and then get it back into the sculpting for a little bit. Moses was told by God to go out in the early morning and meet the Pharaoh at the water. There have been 3 previous plagues, and the Pharaoh has gone back on his word every time. Well, this time, God is going to bring flies. So Moses tells him exactly what God tells him to say. And to summarize it, he's going to send flies. The flies are going to be in his palace, in the homes of all of his officials, and throughout the land of Egypt. They will be everywhere, just like the frogs and the gnats. But this is going to be flies. And I'm trying to paint the palace here, so bear with me. But yeah, he specifically said the palace and all of his officials. He pointed them out first, and then he said, and in all of Egypt and in all of the houses of the Egyptians, but they will not invade the land of Goshen. Now remember, the land of Goshen is where all of the Hebrews live. Back when we very first started, the Hebrew people went to Egypt during the 7-year plague. Now their brother Joseph, the older sons of Jacob, sold Joseph into slavery there because they didn't like the fact that Moses gave him a coat of many colors. They stole his coat, ripped it to pieces, and put blood on it, and gave it to Moses and said that Joseph had been attacked and he was dead. Well, this is some years later, and they are now in the land of Goshen, because this is where the first Pharaoh that they talked to, the one that liked Joseph, had put Joseph as second only to the Pharaoh. Above all other people, he put Joseph over them all so that he could manage the land. He could manage the crops, everything. So they had planned, because Joseph interpreted a dream, they had planned for this shortage, and they had stored up. So that word got around, and Jacob sent Joseph's brothers to go and ask if they could get some corn. And they took their sacks, and they went, and Joseph filled them with corn, but he didn't reveal himself. He was older, and he stood right there and talked to them, but they didn't recognize him. They got back home, and the money that they'd given to pay for the corn was in their sacks. They were afraid. they were afraid that they would get in trouble for that. So all this goes on, but the Pharaoh had given all of the Hebrew people the land of Goshen, which was in the northern region near the mouth of the Nile where it flowed into the Mediterranean. Now, the Nile flows north, so there was no salt water in the delta there in the land of Goshen. That was all fresh water that poured into the Mediterranean. So this is years later, and there's been several pharaohs. Joseph's gone, Jacob's gone, all the brothers are gone. But all the brothers' descendants and Joseph's make up the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, they've flourished, and the last couple of pharaohs got afraid that they would be too numerous. They enslaved them. Well, here we are years later, and they don't like the idea of losing these slaves, especially the Pharaoh. So when Moses goes to him, now Moses had been a prince. He had been treated like a prince because he had been guarded by his sister, and then he was adopted by the Pharaoh's daughter. And there's some things that sometime I might add in because it's just a matter of numbers. But I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get where I painted those figures in, because I had watched somebody paint small figures, and they used little squares to kind of guide them, and then they would paint in all the little things to make them look human. But here they are. All right, they're at the river. They have told Pharaoh to let the people go. And he says, well, you can offer your sacrifice right here. Moses isn't dumb. He says, that would not work. You know the Egyptian people would stone us for worshiping our God in their land. Pharaoh knew this because the Egyptians really looked down their noses at the Hebrew people. And they didn't appreciate them going against their gods. So Moses said, please, let our people go into the desert. 3 days journey. And the Pharaoh says, okay, but you're going to have to get rid of these flies. Because when he said the flies are going to be coming over, that's what happened right away. And they got into everything. But he told Moses they could go into the desert, but they were not to go out of eyesight. Now, what good was that? So finally, Pharaoh says, okay, get rid of these flies. And then you can go into the desert. I'll let you go. Well, immediately the flies all died. And as soon as the Hebrews started getting ready to go into the desert, Pharaoh changed his mind again. He hardened his heart again, and he reminds me of a small child whose memory is about as long as a few minutes. He just does not learn. God's going to keep bringing these plagues, and they're going to get worse and worse. But Pharaoh is not learning his lesson. And when he requests that the plague stop, that then God isn't cruel. He gives him the chance every time. And what does he do? He changes his mind. So then we come to a new plague, and generally one that's worse. The one before this was gnats. Now we have full-grown flies, and they're everywhere. Now, I'm going to put a few dark black dots for flies, but I'm writing up there, I'm writing flies, because it's easier to name. It just naming the plague gives an idea of what these are, these big dots. It's not easy to draw thousands of flies or even 100 on a little paper like this and make them look like flies. Besides that, it takes a long time to do. So the flies are dead. Pharaoh has gone back on his word again. So the Hebrew people are not able to sacrifice to God. So there will be another plague. And I've got a little bit of time left here. Do you remember when they were going and killing the babies? The first, they told the midwives of the Hebrews, or Pharaoh did, to kill all of the baby boys and let the baby girls live. And that would have been the generation when Aaron was born. He's 3 years older than Moses. But the Hebrew midwives did not kill the babies. So this is why Aaron was able to stay home and grow up at home. Now Moses was during the time when the soldiers of Pharaoh were sent out to kill the male babies. So it must have been a couple years later or something, or it went on for a time. Moses was saved by his sister sending him in a basket down the Nile. And when the princess, the Pharaoh's daughter, saw him, she adopted him. But Miriam, his mother, became his wet nurse. So she was able to take him home for a few years. So he knew Aaron. He got to know Aaron. And his mother was able to teach him the way of the Hebrew people. So it was not new to Moses to find out he was Hebrew or to know the ways of the Hebrew people. Because I would, of course, like for you to go back and listen to all of the videos of these plagues. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. And hopefully we'll get through these plagues pretty quick. I am so happy you guys are sticking with me. Realize that God is God, and he has told Pharaoh over and over again. He's shown his power so that there would be no doubt. But Pharaoh still, he knows. He's like, okay, you've got a God. But I think I'm better than that. Well, he's just going to have to keep learning the hard way, isn't he? I mean, I'm sure his people weren't happy with the fact that they had flies all over the place. Especially not happy that the Hebrews didn't. So, anyway, I love you all, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.